Secret number 5. This is another personal story. That guy standing next to me is next to my tank there, fire breather. That guy is Command Sergeant Major Ed Braze, and he is one of the greatest American soldiers you'll ever meet. And he was my Command Sergeant Major of a tank battalion on the DMZ in Korea, the demilitarized zone in Korea. Command Sergeant Majors are like God in a battalion. You do what they say. Commanders who do not listen to their Command Sergeant Majors are fools. Now, I'm pretty foolish, but we used to have this morning run. Command Sergeant Major and I would get out and run with the troops. Oftentimes we'd run on our own. We'd do a 5-mile run, and we'd visit all the troops as we were running. So we're on our morning run, and he says, "Sir, you got to make a decision." I said, "Okay, Command Sergeant Major, what's up?" "Boots, sir, boots." I was quiet for a few minutes, trying to take in boots. "So what's the problem, Command Sergeant Major?" "Well, sir, we're tankers, and we have to wear leather boots in the M1 tank. Some of these guys are wearing these damn jungle boots that are nylon. And you know what happens in an M1 tank when you get a flare back from that main gun. That flame will come out, and that'll melt your boots, and we'll have wounded people. We have to wear leather boots. They're buying these boots downtown cheap. We got to get them leather boots." I didn't say anything. I just kept running. To my left, I could feel the heat from my Command Sergeant Major. He was getting mad because I wasn't answering him. It was almost like as if, you could touch it. It was like, hot. I said, "Command Sergeant Major, I'm not going to make that decision." Oh, man, it got hotter and hotter. All I heard was grumbling and mumbling, and finally, about half a mile later, says, "Sir, why won't you make that decision?" I said, "Command Sergeant Major, you make the decision. That's your department. I don't worry about boots. I worry about other things." So, lesson learned there from one of my great heroes in life. Don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and let them surprise you with their results. Delegate authority, and give people authority and responsibility in the right way. If they understand your intent, which is your purpose and your method and your end state, they can do almost anything in the right way. Authority and responsibility and accountability are the keys to understanding one of the techniques of leadership. If you are someone with authority but no responsibility, you are a tyrant, because it doesn't matter what happens. You can just tell people what to do. If you have responsibility with no authority, you're a victim. So don't ever be responsible for something without some authority. And always appoint accountability. When you tell someone that you need to get something done, make sure that you tell them in clear fashion, this is the task, this is the purpose, this is the end state, and this is when you expect it. Secret number 6, TR, bully. How many of you know much about Teddy Roosevelt? He is an interesting character. He is, particularly in this moment in time when he was the executive officer of the 1st American Volunteer Cavalry in 1898 in the Spanish-American War, he was a force of nature, an unbelievable leader who inspired a regiment of guys. You may have heard of the Rough Riders. His regiment was called the Rough Riders, and he wasn't even in command of the regiment. He was the executive officer until after they'd gotten to Spain and fought their first couple battles. His commander, Colonel Leonard Wood, was promoted to general and took command of a division. So now Roosevelt was placed in command of the regiment. And then they had this fight at a place called Kettle Hill, which was right next to San Juan Hill. Now what had happened was interesting. The American soldiers had approached Kettle Hill and were waiting for the attack on San Juan Hill and for forces on the left to move up. So the orders were, don't attack, wait. So they waited at the base of this hill. They thought they were out of range of the Spanish Mausers, but they weren't. They started taking tremendous fire from the top of the hill from the Spaniards, who had, by the way, with them German advisors who were teaching them how to use the Maxim machine gun and the cannons that were at the top of the hill. So here we are at the bottom of the hill, and Roosevelt's cavalry regiment, along with the 10th Cavalry, Buffalo Soldiers, an all-black regiment, led by a guy named John Pershing, Black Jack Pershing. These two guys, who later, by the way, becomes the commander of all U.S. forces in World War I, General Pershing. But here he's a captain. And Roosevelt and he, the 10th Cavalry and the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, are on line behind a little gully, taking tremendous fire from the Spaniards at the top of the hill. Roosevelt waits for orders. It's a confused situation. There's no radio in these days. Messages have to be sent by horseback or by bugle or by signal flags. No messages are getting through. Nothing is happening. His men are taking heavy casualties. He sees that other forces are coming up on the left toward San Juan Hill, but he can only imagine what the whole fight is. He sends a rider back. That rider gets shot. Pershing volunteers to go back himself to find out. Pershing runs back, finds General Wheeler, who's in charge of the Corps, and says, "General Wheeler, can we attack?" General Wheeler is kind of deranged with malaria at the time, on his horseback, got out of his sickbed to be part of the fight. He says, "Attack? By God, we attack." Unfortunately, he didn't know what was going on. So Black Jack Pershing comes back and says, "I got orders from Wheeler to attack." Roosevelt says, "Let's go, up the hill." Roosevelt on his horse, and the name of his horse? Little Texas. He gets on his horse. Now everybody's being shot because these Mausers are accurate, and they're shooting right and left, and guys are falling, and he gets on a horse so everybody can see him. He's charging up the hill on the horse. He's the only one of the Rough Riders on a horse. Everybody else is running by foot. They go through the first wire. He gets off his horse. He gets on foot. He fights his way to the top of the hill. Roosevelt personally kills 3 or 4 Spaniards in the fight. The melee at the top of the hill is hand-to-hand. The machine guns are overtaken. The cannon are overtaken. The Rough Riders and the 10th Cavalry make it to the top of the hill, take Kettle Hill. Roosevelt then turns the guns from Kettle Hill onto San Juan Hill, and they machine gun the Spaniards at San Juan Hill while San Juan Hill is being attacked, and wins the fight. One of the things Roosevelt used to say is that leaders pull, bosses push. He led by example. Example is the most important form of leadership. You know this because this is how you learned as a child. This is how your children learn from you. You can say whatever you want. They'll watch what you do. Same with your team members. People ask the difference between a leader and a boss. The leader works in the open, and the boss in covert. The leader leads, and the boss drives. Don't be a boss. Lead. Secret number 7, our final story. Another soldier, George Catlett Marshall. You probably don't even know who he is. Some of you may have heard of the Marshall Plan. This guy was called the Organizer of Victory by Winston Churchill. When the United States military entered World War II, it was a very small force. In the 30s, the United States Army had only 3 combat effective divisions. The Germans invaded Poland with 39. Our army was so small and so poorly equipped, we only had 14,000 officers in the entire army. By 1945, we had 8.5 million men under arms. Huge expansion, worldwide commitments. Marshall was in charge of working with Franklin Delano Roosevelt to make that miracle of a victory happen. He coordinated with Congress. He picked personally the leaders like Eisenhower and Patton. He coordinated with generals that were already established like MacArthur. He was in charge. He was in charge of the entire war effort. Marshall, an amazing leader. And what was interesting about him was he didn't want the credit. He didn't care about the headlines. Now later on, he'd get the Nobel Peace Prize. He'd become Secretary of State. He would work out the Marshall Plan, which saved Europe from devastation and communism, because Europe had been absolutely burned to the bone. Cities were destroyed. The economy was gone. France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, Italy. These countries had nothing at the end of 1945. And he developed the plan that would use American economic might and know-how and advisors to help build their economies back up and give them pride in what they did. And also Japan, because even though we had fought a vicious war against the Japanese at the end of World War II, we took all our allies up and said, we're going to help you. Marshall was a huge part of that. He wasn't one of those guys shouting for revenge. He was a wise leader. One of the things he said is there's no limit to the good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. That's pretty good. And that's the way he was. And what this does is this kind of is said in this way. Effective leaders don't shine, they reflect. Now think about that. It's not about you, it's about the team. That's what leaders do. My officers, I used to say, it's not about you, it's not about I, it's about us. And of course we had US on our insignia. It's about US, not only us as a team, but us as a nation, us as the United States. So leaders don't shine, they reflect. So, what is leadership? This is my definition of leadership. You need to have your own definition. You're welcome to take mine. But if you don't have a definition of leadership in your brain housing group, then you should make one. Think about what leadership means to you. For me, leadership is a sacred trust. It is the art of influence. It is the ability to motivate, inspire, and impel people to get the mission accomplished. Get your team together, have them sit down over a cup of coffee or lunch and say, with a blank piece of paper, write down in one paragraph your definition of leadership. Think how hard that will be for them. Think how hard it might be for you. If you've never done that, do it. If you have a definition of leadership, that's a start point for everything. If you don't have a definition of leadership, it's some vague notion. Leadership is a sacred trust. It's the art of influence. It is the ability to motivate, inspire, and impel people to get a mission accomplished. Impel is important. I didn't say compel. I didn't say force. Impel, you have to understand the word, means to urge and to encourage, while compel means to take action as a result of pressure or coercion. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when I look someone in the eye and I say, do it. But if I have built up trust with them, and they know my heart as a leader, and they still refuse, then I have to relieve them. Because at that point, we have to get things done. If Washington crossing the Delaware had come to the point where Henry Knox had said, sir, I can't take these cannon and I won't do it, Washington would have said, Henry, I'll do it. Stand aside. Or he would have gotten someone else to do it. Impel, not compel. I'm going to leave you with another story that encapsulates all the power of leadership. I've talked about Major Zimbiak every time I have a leadership presentation because I'm so impressed with this young officer. This is a picture of him during the Battle of Fallujah in Iraq in 2004. The Battle of Fallujah was our Stalingrad. This was the fight for a city that was close quarters combat, deadly, desperate, and leadership won out. Our leadership beat their leadership. Our soldiers beat their fighters because of guys like Zimbiak. Character is your compass. It is your leadership compass. Everything that you do involving your leadership is guided by your character. He wrote a letter to his son, and this is what he said. He said, be a man of principle. Fight for what you believe in. Keep your word. Live with integrity. Be brave. Believe in something bigger than yourself. Serve your country. Teach. Mentor. Give something back to society. Lead from the front. Conquer your fears. Be a good friend. Be humble and be self-confident. Appreciate your friends and family. Be a leader and not a follower. Be valorous on the field of battle and take responsibility for your actions. Never forget those that were killed and never let rest those that killed them. He was killed in combat in Iraq after serving his 4th tour, and May 11th, 2007. But that letter to his son encapsulates what leadership is all about. So, here are my 7 secrets for you, which you are very free to tell anyone you want. First, a leader chooses courage. Second, a leader must learn to follow in order to learn to lead. Third, a leader must be determined to succeed. Fourth, a leader must teach, coach, and mentor. Fifth, a leader must delegate authority. Sixth, a leader pulls, bosses push. 7, a leader doesn't shine, but reflects. That's what I think leadership is. And if I had the opportunity to change that visual dictionary, this is what I would put for leadership. Because those values are the compass that I believe focus correct leadership, and those are the values I use for my leadership. Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, personal courage, integrity, and honor. And in the end, it's all about the team and the camaraderie. There are moments in your life, if you have led correctly, that are electric. And when you stand in front of that team, and they're scared, wet, cold, hungry, and tired, but they're willing to go, it's worth more than anyone can say. It's all about the camaraderie. Thank you.